Take two, welcome to Beware Spoilers. I am Adam. We had a slight issue last time through, which is annoying. I got like 9 minutes into recording it, and I had to delete the whole thing. I didn't know, because when you use Spreaker Studio, you can't view live what's going on. I just happened to look down at the bottom to see how the levels were going and make sure I was talking loud enough for it to pick up, and I noticed it wasn't picking up my audio at all. So yeah, that was fun. So here we are, the 2019 year in review. We're going to do Into the Spider-Verse later on, but we're going to do this first, only because I want to get this up definitely today. I can put the other one up tomorrow, worst case scenario. But I did see it, so it is being considered with everything. So I have, basically what I have is I have a top 10 movies of the year. I did rank them. Then I have 4 little optional other categories, honorable mentions, if you will. Honorable and 2 honorable, 2 dishonorable. And then I have 10 predictions for 2019, which we'll do last. So let's do the honorable and dishonorable mentions first, because that's the most fun. So I got most underrated movie. I have worst special effects, most improved franchise, and most regressed franchise. Most underrated movie was an easy one. Oh, by the way, these are the only movies that I've seen this year. I've only seen 28 movies that came out in theaters, which sounds like a lot, but I've only seen 28 of them. So if a movie that you like didn't make, like, this is not to disparage Barry Jenkins, or If Beale Street Could Talk, which I want to see, but I have not seen it yet, or Vice with Adam McKay, or anyone else that I haven't seen yet that I want to see. It hasn't made the list yet because I haven't seen it. And I also made it a rule where if I saw a movie, just because I saw a movie in, in the year, if it didn't come out in 2018, I didn't count it. So The Post, which is the first movie I saw this year, didn't count, but it was phenomenal as well. But that didn't count because I saw it in 2018, but it was a 2017 release. So I have, let's do most underrated movie. If you listen to this podcast, you know how much I love this movie. That's obviously going to go to Peppermint, which was the Jennifer Garner, John Wick-esque revenge film from this year, where her husband and her daughter get killed in a drive-by after her husband got into a shady business deal, and then he tried to back out of it, but too late. He ends up getting killed. She goes on a killing spree to get revenge, and it's just a fun, like, bloodbath of a movie. It's like Geostorm, where it's like, if you go to Geostorm to expect anything more than just your fill of disaster porn and basically an over-the-top B movie, then you're not gonna get what you're looking for. But if you go into this movie expecting to get out of it what the movie is, then you'll be happy. You're going to see just gratuitous violence on a level with moderate, like a moderate reason why the violence should happen, which is, she's avenging the death of her husband and daughter. So that's a fun one that didn't quite get to play because of the racial undertones. The political climate revolves around guns. If it repeats, it's because for some reason the mic keeps cutting in and out, but I'm keeping a good eye on it this time. So I'm just gonna, as soon as I realize it does that, I'm gonna cut back and cut back in, which should solve the problem. Now, the next one, worst special effects. That one, hands down, goes to Venom. It was a pretty... I don't know why it keeps doing that. It's the worst day to do that, too. Of course, I waited until the last possible minute to record this, but it was a pretty good year of special effects, because Ant-Man and the Wasp came out, that had pretty good. And then there was Infinity War had pretty good effects. Black Panther had okay effects. It really just came down to Aquaman and Venom, but it ended up going to Venom only because Aquaman had very great establishing shots that were almost entirely CG. The world of Atlantis is very beautifully rendered, and it looks fantastic. That said, Venom, on the other hand, Venom's a character who is, I'm talking Venom, not Eddie Brock, is mostly liquid as a character. His physical form is closer to a liquid. but they didn't work to get that to look good, and it's incredibly apparent during the final fight, which is set entirely in the dark, just that way it's hard to see. And a lot of the fight sequences in the movie are set in the dark at night, so that way you can't see how bad it looks. So what they do is it just makes a mess of the final action sequences. And if the effects are bad enough where it hinders enjoyment in a movie, that's where it crosses the line. Where Aquaman had some bad effects, but it's not. It didn't hurt the overall movie. Most improved. Speaking of Aquaman, this is where Aquaman comes in. Aquaman in the DC Extended Universe. That's hands down the best movie that they've put out from Warner Brothers at DC at Warner Brothers has been Wonder Woman. Then it took a massive step back with Justice League. Now, attempting to right the ship, they have Aquaman, and they did a pretty good job of that. For lack of a better word, it keeps them from taking on water. And it is a pretty fun movie, and it does genuinely make me excited to see what they're going to do with Shazam and with Wonder Woman 1984, and to a lesser extent with Joker. And really, there wasn't any other real franchise that came out this year that needed vast improvement that this could have done it. That could have, fit into. So by default, Aquaman and the DC Extended Universe win Most Improved. Most Regressed. This is a two-way tie, because there were two things, neither of which were movies, that drastically reduced the regressed how they run things. And it's a video game, Pokemon as a franchise, and a TV show, Arrow. So we'll do Pokemon first. Last year, Pokemon's game was Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And Sun and Moon made massive strides forward in trying to reinvigorate a franchise that was largely stagnant. The general story stayed the same. It's just specifics of the story, the region it was set in, all those things changed year in, year out. Then Sun and Moon comes along, which throws a wrench in the whole thing and changes everything. And that was largely for the best. And herein lies the problem. When you get to Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, not enough has been done to change. Everything goes back to the way it was before, because it's largely a remake of red, blue, and yellow. Mostly yellow, because it keeps a lot of yellow's stuff intact. Now, herein lies the problem, though. Every previous remake has kept in the changes that they've made in the franchise to that point. Where they keep in... When they remade Fire Red and Leaf Green, they kept in the next evolutions. Crobat, Steelix, all of those things, still in the game. Baby evolutions, still in the game. Day-Night Cycle wasn't, but that was due to technical limitations at the time. But what was the other one? Then when they did Heart Gold and Soul Silver, everything stayed in from previous games. And then when they remade, same thing when they remade Ruby and Sapphire. Now, they said we're here to make the game more serviceable to children and beginners in the franchise. In '95, there was no returning player, because it was the first game that came out. And that game that they put out is the one that launched this multi-billion-dollar franchise. And here's the problem. The target audience hasn't changed in 25 years, which isn't a good or a bad thing. The target audience is exactly the same. But they're treating the target audience like they're dumber than previous generations. And that's where the problem comes in. So they're removing abilities. They're removing hold items. They're removing the friendship system. Removing everything from the franchise prior to this point, which doesn't make it any better or worse. It just makes it worse. Like, everything that should have been there is not there. Why? I don't know. The reasons aren't good. And if you're going to go out and you're going to make this game, and it's going to be your flagship game, your first example, making this game on the Nintendo Switch, a console whose development kit you've had for years before anyone else, it's a little ridiculous that this is the best you can come up with. And Arrow On the other side of the coin, Arrow has had issues since season 3. We're in season 7 now. Since season 3 of quality, where a lot of it feels like they don't know what they're gonna do, and rather than trying to stick within the box that they have and try to move out of the box in a smart way, they go out of the box. Like if they're trying to open a box to get inside to look at what's inside, they'll cut the side open rather than opening the open top already. There's plenty of ground to cover in Arrow. There's no real reason for the show to be the way it is right now, where it's like they spent half the year with Oliver in prison, which is fine. I will give them props for that, because they had more commitment than the writers on The Flash did doing that last year on The Flash, where he was only in prison for literally 3 episodes, and one of the episodes was a jailbreak. They needed to change at some point, and they never really did. And rather than taking adjustments to relationships and adjustments to characters and things like that and sticking with them, they seem, and this is a problem across all of the shows there, they seem hesitant to make any concrete character changes because it changes the status quo too much. So, like, Felicity and Oliver get married last season. Now the marriage is in trouble because instead of exploring new characters and giving them interesting things to do, they just reuse the same stuff. Felicity and Oliver, Felicity and Oliver, Felicity and Oliver. There's a character called John Diggle on the show who you would not know was there because he has no function anymore. He's been written to a point where it's like, what's he doing there now? Because it's like, he's director of Argus, yeah, but then there's Lila who can do the same thing. It's like, there's so many other characters that are overlapping and doing the same things that, like, why are they still there? They ship them off to Legends if you don't know what to do with them. So yeah, so that's going to be the most regressed show of 2018. Which brings us to our top 10. Now again, top 10 is in order. I did think about this rather hard, and the top 2 were flipping back and forth. I did not unpause it after all that news, so here's where I was. So, once you see where the movie's going, you can really tell why she's acting the way she is and all of that. Where what is abrasive becomes more endearing. What's the way she acts towards Common, towards everyone else, becomes more understood, and you can really feel with the character and empathize and all of that. But while you're trying to get the movie the first time, it's a lot to really take in at once. Especially considering a lot of it is not well explained until that point in the movie comes along. So, like, while it's never explained to us what the comedy thing she's going for is, I forgot the name of it. But while it's never explained to us, you kind of figure it out toward the end, and it's explained to you. But she, it is a very good movie to watch. Mary Elizabeth Winstead does a great job of playing a character as flawed and has had so much bad happen to her in her life. And all of that. She does a great job in this movie. So it's really, really worth seeing. The number 6, I may be, you may hear this and I may be going back and forth. It may be going back and forth because I'm having technical issues with this. I've already committed 13 minutes into it and I'm not going to redo it for a third time. So I'll double check the playthrough before I post it, but hopefully it's good. Number 6, Mission Impossible Fallout. And this movie was another one of those movies like Fate of the Furious, like Ocean's 8. I go in, I get what I'm expecting, I'm happy with it, and I leave. The only thing is Ocean's 8 and Fate of the Furious really didn't rise above the expectations, and it gave me exactly what I went in for. Mission Impossible Fallout gives so much more than what it is. It's got some of the best stunt coordination of any movie this year. And the cast plays well off each other, probably because of how many movies they've had to work together. And the chemistry is just there between them. And Henry Cavill does such a good job being effortlessly charming, even as the villain in this movie. So definitely, if you haven't seen Mission Impossible Fallout, definitely give it a chance. The only reason why it's not higher is because I feel like there's a lot more movie that you need to see before it. Like, I feel like this one has required reading that previous entries did not. So yeah, so definitely worth your watch. Number 5, White Boy Rick, which is about the kid in Detroit who works for the feds trying to catch drug dealers, and then he spirals out of control, becoming a drug kingpin himself. It's a very enjoyable organized crime movie that really delves into some of the more pressing issues and can show you what it's like living in impoverished Detroit, and how Detroit is not, how Detroit is now and has for a very long time not been the greatest place for people. Not if you live in Detroit, don't give me shit for that, but this movie doesn't really paint Detroit in the best light. And this poor kid got roped into it. And the thing is, the reason why I like it so much is because the movie is told from the standpoint of the kid and the kid's dad, both of whom are shown throughout the movie to be unreliable narrators. So we don't know how true the story is or how much of what they're saying is true. But yeah, it's a very entertaining movie that at the end really cuts deep into some of the more political issues with the jailing system and with the criminal justice system in Detroit and in Michigan as a whole. So that's definitely worth your watch too. Number 4, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I just saw within the last half hour. This is a fantastic movie. Hands down the best animated movie of the year. Hands down the best superhero movie of the year. It's the art is so good in this movie. They make use of 2D, 3D space so well. All the characters feel like they're real people and not just, drawings. The emotion comes through when you watch it, and it's not a 3D movie. The way the backgrounds look and the characters look, you see the cross hatching, and you can see the little dots like you would see in a comic book. The art style is very reminiscent, even impact things like you would see in the 1966 Batman, and the narration boxes and all of that, meant to invoke the visuals of a comic book, and all of that is wrapping a great story about a kid coming into his own. This scared kid who has powers forced upon him, and he comes into his own to save the universe. And it's such a good movie. And if this is where Sony's going to go with Spider-Man in the future, it's a great image of where they're going in the future. Number 3, Operation Finale, which was a movie about the how they caught one of the last high-ranking Nazi officials in Argentina. The only reason this movie is so high, and I felt conflicted about putting it this high because of how much screen time they give. How much screen time they give to actually allow Nazi ideology to be explained in its simplest terms, so that way people can get into it. That was what really conflicted me away from really putting it this high at all. But the only reason I did was because the performances by Oscar Isaac and Ben Kingsley made this movie so good, and they really sold it. And that it's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it already. It came out back in August, so it'll be on DVD soon. Now, these were the only 2 that I had an issue placing, because number 1, number 2, again, as last year, the top 2 movies are always the best 2, so it's picking between 2 great options. So, number 2, I put 8th Grade, which was Bo Burnham's directorial debut. And the movie is really good at playing on your expectations of when you're watching the movie it's about a girl who's finishing 8th grade and wants to change who she is, because that's what 6th grade her thought she was going to do. She wants to live up to the expectation of 6th grade her. So the movie is about her trying to do that and become cool and trying to change herself to change public perception of her, and really it doesn't matter because she's in 8th grade. So she goes and does things. She doesn't do anything too terrible, but she's she's just trying to become someone she's not. And the movie ends with her realizing she doesn't have to be someone she's not. For people to like her, she should just be her. And it's such a good message, and it's such a well executed movie and well acted, even by some of the younger cast members. The movie is very well done. The only reason it's not higher is because that movie did not make me cry. A Star is Born, which is number 1, did make me cry. which is the ending of that movie. Right after everything from the Grammys on, from the scene at the Grammys on, is what makes this movie number one. When he goes to rehab and he breaks down to Lady Gaga about how he humiliated her and how he had to wait on her life, and then he breaks down to his brother saying that the only thing that the person he looked up to all his life was not his dad, but it was his brother, and the brother crying after that, then his suicide, and then Lady Gaga and the brother talking about him post-mortem and how it's not her fault that he died, it's not his fault, it was his own fault. The whole third act of the movie is what makes the movie so great, and it's because of the acting performances in it. The music is phenomenal in this for mostly original music. I think it's all original music, it's definitely mostly original music, because I think there's at least one licensed song toward the beginning of the movie, with Lady Gaga singing in the club. But it's definitely worth seeing if you haven't seen it already, and I think that this movie should be given serious contention for Best Picture at the Oscars this year. But again, who am I? I'm not an Academy member. So that said, we'll talk about the predictions for 2019. These are in no particular order. These are just predictions that I've had, random thoughts over the last 2 days. So number one is about a video game. Kingdom Hearts 3 is expected to come out on January 28th. This is the prediction about it. It'll perform well with critics and in terms of sales, but the fan base will be ultimately divided about how they feel about the outcome of this, where it's going to be half the fan base is going to love it, half is going to hate it. There's going to be no middle ground. And that'll be how the year opens up. Number two, Star Wars Episode 9, which will be coming out in December, will be underwhelming and will underperform at the box office, leading Disney to reevaluate their Star Wars strategy even further going into 2020 and beyond. Number three, the number one box office spot domestically will be Frozen 2. That's not really a prediction, that's more of just a statement of fact. Number four, neither Detective Pikachu or Sonic the Hedgehog will break the video game movie curse in 2019. Both of those franchises have major motion pictures coming out. Both of them are probably not going to be any good. Number five, Dark Phoenix is going to be panned by critics and by audiences, and it's going to lose money. The New Mutants will never see a theater screen, and it'll be indefinitely shelved following the New Mutants release. The Dark Phoenix release. Number six, Joker will be the 2019 version of Venom. It'll do excellent at the box office, but get terrible reception by critics. Number seven, CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths will be better than Crisis on Earth X. Oliver Queen will die in it and be replaced by Emiko Queen on an ongoing basis on Arrow. Number eight, the 2019 Pokemon game will continue the franchise's slow spiral demise following Sun and Moon. I don't foresee them making any important changes going forward. I don't think that there's going to be anything big and drastic in this game that's going to change it. It's going to be underwhelming, it's going to be more of the same, and it's just going to continue a slow replacement by Yokai Watch. Number 9. The Flashpoint movie will not enter production as planned at the end of 2019. Ezra Miller will be replaced with Barry Allen, so that way they can get the show on the road already. I still think Flashpoint's a bad idea for a first movie for The Flash, but what are you going to do? I don't make these things. I just talk about how they're dumb. And number 10, Wonder Woman 1984 will be the best DC movie offering of 2019 and will be better than the first, followed by Shazam and then Joker. So yeah, those are my thoughts of 2018 and 2019, and we'll be back probably tomorrow after I can get the technical glitch fixed with Into the Spider-Verse. So have a good New Year.